Hello class, welcome to the week 12 unit, and in this unit we're going to be covering how to set up web pages on the class server. So you may remember back in the week 11, one of the week 11 videos, I talked about how one of the reasons why you want to know how to use a command line interface is in case you end up working with a web server. But since our class server is a web server of sorts, then I think it's only appropriate that we explore the idea of hosting a web page on the World Wide Web. So with that, let's go ahead and get on with it. So first thing that you're going to want to do, of course, is to get onto the server. And hopefully this has become really intuitive at this point. And there we go. And the way the server is set up is to host a web page from your account on the server, you'll have to create a directory called public_HTML. So the command, of course, to create a directory is mkdir, and then public_HTML. Excuse me. Make sure that you run this command while in your home directory. As long as this is the very first command you run when you log onto the server, you shouldn't have to worry about any trouble with that. And when I run this command, it's going to give me a different result. It's going to tell me that directory already exists because I already have public_HTML. It says this cannot create directory because it already exists. But if you run this command, then you should be able to create this directory. And then, of course, after creating a directory, you can, of course, go into it using the cd command. And you can see my file path over here on the left-hand side of the screen changes once again. And now that we're inside this directory, we can actually go about hosting a web page. Now, if you want to know how to, before I get into that, I'll go ahead and show you how exactly to access the web page. So to access the web page, first you're going to have to go into an internet browser, such as Safari, Google Chrome, Firefox, Microsoft Edge, or Internet Explorer, whatever Microsoft calls it nowadays. But you go into the web browser, and if you type in this address up here, and I'll go ahead and zoom in so you can see that a little bit better on the screen recording. So it's METR1313.net/tilde. Make sure that tilde is there, and then after that you'll put your 4x4. Now, if you were to go and type that in right now and try to go access it, you would probably see something like this. 403 forbidden, saying you don't have permission to access this on the server, and I'll get to why that's the case in a minute. But if you get a 404 not found error instead of a forbidden error, if you get a 404 not found error instead of a forbidden error, then you mistype something up here, in which case check to make sure you actually type that in correctly. So again, that's METR1313.net/tilde, that little squiggly line, and then your 4x4, not the 4x4 that I put up here. So the way that internet browsing works, I'll get into some of the finer details here. The way that internet browsing works is when you go to type in a URL, you basically get connected to a server, which is a computer that's running nonstop in some part of the world. You get connected to a server. The server then goes to find a directory that has the actual web page content stored in it. And then within that directory, the browser is going to ask for a file called index.html by default. So if that file does not exist within the directory holding your web stuff, then you're going to get this error message, 403 forbidden, saying you don't have permission to access this on the server. So the way that we solve that problem is we go ahead and create the file called index.html, and we can create the file just like we would any other file using the gany command. So that'd be gny index.html, and make sure you run this command. Make sure you're in public_HTML before you run this command. Otherwise, you will create index.html, but it's not going to be in the right directory, in which case you're still going to get the forbidden error, and we don't want that. So if we do that, should open up gny. And I'll go ahead and close out of some of this so that we can focus on index.html. And we have to put something in there to actually save it, but I'm not going to put anything in here particularly meaningful at this point in time. I'll talk more about HTML stuff in the next segment, but for now, I just want to focus on the actual setup itself. So here I'll just say something like that. I just have to put something in there in order to save the file first. So that's what I'm going to do. And now if I go back to my internet browser and I hit refresh, a keyboard shortcut for that on a Mac at least is Command R, but there's other ways. There's a refresh icon over here, and on Windows, I think it's F5. But now you can see we no longer get the 403 forbidden error, which the reason why is because now we have a file called index.html inside of our, along with a lot of other files, we now have a file called index.html within the directory that's hosting all of our web stuff. So all this other stuff is going to show up on the screen because I've had this web server for a really long time, but the only thing that should show up right now is index.html, and that's the main thing that you want to see. That way, when the browser goes and looks at this, goes to this address, it's going to request a file called index.html in your public_HTML directory. If that index.html file is not found, you'll get the forbidden error, but if it is found, then it will display whatever is contained within the HTML file. But that's the basic setup. So if you don't get the 403 forbidden error, then you should be good to go. And in the next segment, we'll talk more about how to actually create a web page using HTML content. So with that, I'll see you in the next segment.